You know that person who gets under your skin? The one whose words replay in your mind for hours, days, maybe even weeks? Here's the uncomfortable truth. They're not the problem. You are. And Carl Jung discovered why. If someone has bothered you in the last 24 hours, this video is for you. Keep watching. What you're about to learn will change everything. What he found wasn't just disturbing, it shattered everything we thought we knew about anger, triggers, and control. Jung uncovered a specific type of person who exists among us. People who never lose their cool, who remain untouched when insulted, unbothered by criticism, immune to the emotional manipulation that controls the rest of us. They don't suppress their rage. They don't breathe through it. They've undergone something else entirely, a psychological transformation so profound that other people's behavior simply doesn't register. It's like they're living in a different reality than the rest of us. Jung called his discovery disturbing for one reason. It revealed that most of us are emotional slaves, and we don't even know it. Before we dive in, hit that like button if you're ready to break free from emotional slavery. Your future self will thank you. Today, I'm going to show you the truth Jung uncovered about people who never get angry, and more importantly, the exact psychological process that can set you free. The case that broke Jung's understanding of human psychology began in 1919. A successful German businessman, let's call him Heinrich, walked into Jung's office, but he wasn't suffering. He wasn't broken. He was too calm. His wife was terrified. His employees couldn't read him, and everyone around him felt deeply, viscerally uncomfortable because Heinrich had become emotionally untouchable. Insults bounced off him like rain off glass. Criticism made him curious, not defensive. Betrayal fascinated him rather than destroyed him. His wife brought him to Jung in desperation. "Doctor," she confessed, "yesterday I told my husband I'd been having an affair for 6 months." Jung leaned forward. "And?" He asked me 3 questions. Was I happy? Did I need anything from him? And whether I wanted to stay married or leave. No rage, no tears, no accusations, just questions. Jung should have diagnosed emotional numbness, trauma, dissociation. But when he dug deeper, he discovered something that shook him to his core. Heinrich wasn't numb. He felt everything. He had simply learned to see his triggers as mirrors, reflecting parts of himself he hadn't fully understood. This was Jung's breakthrough. Every person who angers you is showing you something about your own unconscious mind. The coworker who dismisses your ideas, they're reflecting your fear that maybe you are inadequate. The friend who's always late, they're mirroring your desperate need for control. The family member who criticizes your choices, they're exposing the self-doubt you've been hiding from yourself. Pause this video right now. Think of the last person who triggered you. Got them in mind? Good. Now ask yourself, what trait in them am I judging most harshly? Write it down. I'll wait. Heinrich had mastered this principle 3 years earlier after a devastating betrayal. His closest business partner had stolen his biggest client and nearly destroyed everything he'd built. Most people would have sought revenge. Heinrich asked himself one question instead. What part of me is this person reflecting? The answer shattered him. His partner's greed reflected Heinrich's own suppressed fear of poverty. His partner's dishonesty mirrored Heinrich's tendency to hide his true feelings. His partner's betrayal revealed Heinrich's own capacity for selfishness. By facing these shadow aspects, instead of projecting them onto others, Heinrich achieved what Jung called psychological immunity. He could see other people's behavior as information about them, not attacks on him. Jung documented this process meticulously. When someone triggers you, instead of reacting, you ask 3 questions. What trait in this person am I judging most harshly? Where do I exhibit this same trait, even in small ways? What is this trigger trying to teach me about myself? Let me show you how devastatingly effective this is. Sarah, a marketing manager, felt her blood boil every time her colleague Tom interrupted her in meetings. Using Jung's method, she forced herself to be honest. What am I judging in Tom? his need for attention. Where do I do this? She realized she dominated conversations whenever she felt insecure. What is this teaching me? That her anger at Tom was really frustration with her own attention-seeking behavior. Once Sarah owned this shadow aspect, something miraculous happened. Tom's interruptions stopped bothering her. She could see them for what they were. His insecurity, not an attack on her worth. That's the power of the shadow mirror. It transforms triggers into teachers. But Jung's research revealed something even more disturbing. The people who achieved emotional impermeability had discovered a psychological space that most humans never access, a place that exists between stimulus and response. Heinrich described it to Jung like this. Doctor, when someone insults me, something strange happens. Time slows down. I can see their words coming toward me, but instead of hitting me, they hover in the air. And in that moment, I have a choice. Do I catch these words and make them mine, or do I let them pass through me? Jung realized Heinrich had stumbled upon what he called the reaction gap, a psychological space where conscious choice replaces unconscious reaction. Think about it. For most people, trigger and response feel like one continuous event. Someone insults you and boom, you're angry. It feels automatic, inevitable, beyond your control. But Jung's patients proved otherwise. With the right training, anyone could access this gap and choose their response. This contradicted everything psychology understood about human nature. The technique Jung developed was deceptively simple, but psychologically profound. He called it the observer protocol. When triggered, instead of immediately reacting, you step back and observe the trigger as if watching a movie. You notice the other person's words, their body language, their emotional state. But most importantly, you observe your own internal response without becoming it. Try this with me right now. Remember that person who triggered you earlier? Imagine their face. Feel the trigger starting to rise. Now, step back. Watch it like you're watching a character in a movie. See? You just accessed the reaction gap. If this feels powerful, smash that subscribe button. We're going deeper. Maria, a teacher, learned to observe her principal's criticism without taking it personally. Instead of becoming defensive, she could see his stress, his pressure from the school board, his own insecurities. From the observer position, she could respond with empathy rather than anger. Here's the key insight Jung discovered. You are not your emotions. You are the consciousness that observes your emotions. When someone triggers anger in you, that anger is information, not identity. You can choose to act on it, examine it, or simply let it pass. Heinrich had mastered this so completely that he described feeling psychologically transparent. Other people's negativity passed through him like light through glass. He wasn't avoiding anything. He wasn't suppressing anything. He was simply choosing not to identify with every emotional impulse. But here's what Jung found most disturbing. Once people developed this ability, they often lost interest in the drama that consumed everyone else. They stopped caring about being right, winning arguments, or proving their worth. This made them incredibly powerful, but it also isolated them. Jung found that most people could access the reaction gap within weeks of consistent practice. The technique involves 3 steps. Pause when triggered and take a conscious breath. Observe the trigger and your response without judgment. Choose your action based on your values, not your impulses. This isn't about becoming emotionless or detached. It's about becoming the author of your responses rather than the victim of your reactions. Jung's research revealed another disturbing pattern. People who never got angry had built what he called boundary fortresses around their psychological space. Heinrich explained it perfectly. Doctor, I learned that people can only disturb my peace if I give them permission. Their words, their actions, their emotions, these are external events. They only become internal experiences if I choose to internalize them. This revolutionized Jung's understanding. Most people have completely permeable psychological boundaries. They absorb other people's emotions, take on their stress, and allow external events to dictate their internal state. but those with emotional immunity had learned to construct selective barriers. Jung documented 3 types of boundaries his immune patients developed. The relevance filter. They trained themselves to only absorb information that served their growth or goals. Everything else was acknowledged, but not internalized. The ownership boundary. They could distinguish between their emotions and other people's emotions. When someone was angry at them, they could see it as that person's anger, not their anger about that person's anger. The identity fortress. They had such a solid sense of self that external criticism couldn't shake their core identity. They could hear feedback without hearing judgment of their worth. But Jung discovered something disturbing about these boundaries. People who developed them became magnets for those who lacked them. Toxic individuals, energy vampires, emotionally unstable people, they were all drawn to those with strong boundaries because they provided the stability these chaotic personalities craved. Heinrich experienced this constantly. "Doctor, ever since I stopped reacting to provocation, people seem to work harder to provoke me. It's as if my calm disturbs them more than anger ever could." Jung realized why. Emotionally reactive people use others' reactions to regulate their own emotional state. When Heinrich refused to provide that regulation, it forced others to confront their own psychological instability. The boundary fortress technique Jung developed involved 3 strategic elements. First, the emotional firewall. Before entering any social situation, you consciously decide which emotions you're willing to experience and which you'll observe but not absorb. Second, the response selection. You pre-decide how you'll handle common triggers. Instead of reacting in the moment, you're executing a pre-planned response based on your values. Third, the identity anchor. You maintain such a clear sense of who you are that external opinions become interesting data rather than threats to your self-concept. David, a software engineer, was constantly stressed by his demanding boss. Using Jung's method, he implemented an emotional firewall before work each day. He decided he would observe his boss's stress, but not absorb it. He pre-selected calm, professional responses to criticism. And he anchored his identity in his competence and growth, not his boss's approval. Within weeks, David felt untouchable at work. His boss's moods no longer affected his performance or peace of mind. But more importantly, his boss began treating him with more respect, as if sensing David's newfound psychological strength. This is the paradox Jung discovered. The stronger your boundaries, the more others respect them. People can sense psychological strength and typically adjust their behavior accordingly. Quick question: which boundary do you need most right now? The relevance filter, ownership boundary, or identity fortress? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one, and I'll give you personalized advice. Jung's most disturbing discovery involved what he called projection reversal. His immune patients had learned to see through others' emotional attacks to the psychological wounds driving them. Heinrich demonstrated this during one session. A business rival had publicly humiliated him, calling him a heartless profiteer who cares nothing for his workers. Instead of anger or defense, Heinrich felt curiosity. "Doctor, this man's attack told me everything about his psychology and nothing about mine. His accusation of heartlessness revealed his fear of being seen as unfeeling. His focus on profit showed his financial insecurity. His concern for workers exposed his guilt about his own treatment of employees." Jung realized Heinrich had mastered psychological X-ray vision, the ability to see through surface attacks to underlying psychological dynamics. Here's the truth. When someone attacks you, they're always telling you something about themselves, not you. This discovery was disturbing because it meant most human conflict was based on psychological projection. People weren't really fighting each other. They were fighting projections of their own unresolved issues onto each other. Jung documented the pattern repeatedly. Criticism about your appearance, it comes from people insecure about their looks. Attacks on your success, from those frustrated with their achievements. Judgments about your choices, from those doubting their own decisions. But here's what Jung found most troubling. Once you could see these projections clearly, it became almost impossible to take personal attacks personally. You started feeling compassion for the psychological pain driving others' aggression. Heinrich described the shift. "Doctor, when someone attacks me now, I see a wounded child lashing out in pain. How can I be angry at a child for crying? Instead, I feel curious about what hurt them and whether I can help." This is the ultimate psychological immunity Jung discovered. When you can see others' attacks as expressions of their pain rather than assessments of your worth, you become completely unbothered by their behavior. The technique involves 3 diagnostic questions when someone attacks you. What quality are they attacking in me? Where might they struggle with this same quality? What pain or fear might be driving this attack? Lisa, a graphic designer, was devastated when a client called her work completely unprofessional and amateur. Using projection reversal, she asked herself, "What are they attacking? My professionalism. Where might they struggle with this?" She remembered the client mentioning feeling like an imposter in their industry. What pain drives this? Fear of their own unprofessionalism being exposed. This insight transformed Lisa's response. Instead of taking the criticism personally, she could see it as the client's projection of their own professional insecurities. She addressed their concerns professionally while maintaining her inner peace. But Jung warned about a dangerous side effect. Once you could see through everyone's psychological defenses, maintaining genuine relationships became challenging. You might feel like you were surrounded by wounded children rather than equal adults. Heinrich experienced this isolation. "Doctor, sometimes I feel like I'm the only adult in a world of hurt children. I can see everyone's pain so clearly that I struggle to take any of their behavior seriously." Jung realized this was the price of psychological immunity clarity about human nature that could lead to detachment from human drama. The key was learning to see others' pain without losing compassion for their experience. We're halfway through Jung's most powerful techniques. If you're still with me, you're already in the top 5% who actually want to transform. Subscribe now, because next week, I'm revealing Jung's secret technique for turning toxic people into your greatest teachers. You won't want to miss it. Jung's final discovery was perhaps the most disturbing of all. His patients hadn't just learned to avoid being triggered, they had developed what he called emotional alchemy, the ability to transform every trigger into psychological gold. Heinrich explained, "Doctor, I no longer see difficult people as problems to avoid. I see them as teachers, bringing me exactly the lessons I need for my growth. The more someone can trigger me, the more valuable they are to my development." This represented a complete reversal of normal human psychology. Instead of avoiding triggers, Heinrich actively sought them out as opportunities for growth. Instead of seeing difficult people as enemies, he saw them as unconscious allies in his psychological development. Jung realized this was the ultimate stage of emotional impermeability, transforming every external challenge into internal advancement. The process Heinrich described was methodical. When triggered, instead of reacting or even just observing, he would immediately ask, "What is this person teaching me about myself? What weakness are they exposing that I need to strengthen? What shadow aspect are they forcing me to confront?" Here's what Jung found most disturbing. This level of psychological development created individuals who were nearly impossible to manipulate, control, or defeat emotionally. They had transformed every potential weakness into a source of strength. Think about it. External validation cannot inflate you because you don't need it. External criticism cannot deflate you because you use it for growth. You become emotionally invulnerable not through armor, but through the alchemy of turning every challenge into wisdom. This alchemy involved 3 transformation processes. Trigger mining, actively extracting valuable insights from every person who disturbed your peace. Shadow integration, SEM, using others' behavior to identify and heal your own psychological wounds. Strength synthesis, EBS, converting every discovered weakness into a developed strength. Marcus, a sales manager, was constantly triggered by his team's laziness and excuses. Instead of just managing his reaction, he used emotional alchemy. What is their laziness teaching me? That I expect others to share my drive without understanding their motivations? What weakness does this expose? My inability to inspire rather than demand. What strength can I develop? The skill of motivating others through connection rather than pressure. Marcus transformed his trigger into a growth opportunity. He studied motivation psychology, learned to connect with his team's personal goals, and became one of the company's most effective leaders. His trigger became the catalyst for his greatest professional development. Here's your 7-day challenge. Choose one person who triggers you. For the next week, use them as your teacher. Document what you learn each day. Then come back to this video in 7 days and comment Day 7 complete with your biggest insight. I'll personally respond to as many as I can. Let's build a community of people who can't be bothered. But Jung warned about the dark side of emotional alchemy. People who mastered it sometimes became so focused on their own growth that they lost empathy for those still struggling with basic emotional regulation. They could become psychologically superior and emotionally distant. Heinrich experienced this. Doctor, sometimes I feel like I'm conducting a psychology experiment rather than living a human life. Every interaction becomes a chance to study human nature rather than connect with another person. Jung realized the final challenge of emotional impermeability was maintaining humanity while achieving psychological transcendence. The goal wasn't to become invulnerable, but to become anti-fragile, stronger and more compassionate through every challenge. As Jung wrote, the acceptance of oneself is the essence of the whole moral problem and the epitome of a whole outlook on life. True immunity required accepting both strength and vulnerability. The ultimate stage involved what Jung called compassionate immunity, using your psychological strength to help others rather than to distance yourself from them. Heinrich eventually learned to use his immunity not as a shield, but as a bridge, helping others develop their own emotional resilience. Jung called this final stage the compassionate warrior, someone who could remain untriggered while still caring deeply about others. Heinrich's transformation happened gradually. Initially, his immunity created distance. People found his unshakable calm unsettling, even threatening. But Jung helped him understand that true emotional immunity included the ability to make others feel safe and understood. Doctor, Heinrich reflected, I realized my immunity was incomplete if it only protected me. True strength means creating space for others to feel their emotions without judgment while maintaining my own center. Jung documented how Heinrich learned to use his immunity in service of others. When his wife expressed frustration, instead of remaining unmoved, he held space for her feelings without absorbing them. When his employees brought problems, he listened with full presence, without taking on their stress. This is the paradox Jung discovered. Ultimate emotional immunity requires maintaining your humanity, not transcending it. The compassionate warrior can feel others' pain without suffering, witness others' chaos without becoming chaotic, offer support without becoming depleted. The technique Jung developed was emotional aikido, using the energy of others' emotions to help them rather than resisting or absorbing that energy. When someone brings you anger, you redirect it toward solutions. When someone brings you sadness, you transform it into compassion. When someone brings you fear, you alchemize it into wisdom. Heinrich mastered this so completely that people began seeking him out during their worst emotional crises. His presence alone seemed to calm their inner storms. But he achieved this not through emotional detachment, but through emotional mastery, feeling everything but being controlled by nothing. Jung's final notes on Heinrich revealed the ultimate secret of emotional impermeability. He has learned to love others' humanity while remaining untouchable by their chaos. This is perhaps the highest achievement of human psychology, complete vulnerability combined with complete invulnerability. The businessman who couldn't be bothered became Jung's greatest case study in human psychological potential. Heinrich proved that emotional immunity isn't about becoming cold or detached. It's about becoming so psychologically strong that you can remain warm and connected even in the midst of others' emotional storms. Jung's disturbing discovery about people who never get angry revealed the ultimate truth about human nature. We are not victims of our emotional reactions. With the right understanding and practice, anyone can develop the psychological immunity that makes others' behavior irrelevant to your inner peace. The path Heinrich traveled from shadow integration through boundary fortresses to emotional alchemy and finally to compassionate warrior represents the complete journey of psychological development that Jung believed every human could achieve. Today you've learned the psychological techniques Jung documented in his most private case studies. The shadow mirror that transforms triggers into teachers. The reaction gap that gives you choice over your responses. The boundary fortress that protects your psychological space. Projection reversal that helps you see through others' attacks. Emotional alchemy that turns every challenge into growth. The compassionate warrior that maintains humanity while achieving immunity. Screenshot these 6 techniques right now. Set them as your phone wallpaper. You'll need them tomorrow when someone tries to trigger you. And when you successfully use one, come back and tell me which technique saved you in the comments. Jung's most disturbing discovery wasn't that some people never get angry. It was that this ability reveals the vast psychological potential lying dormant in every human being. The question isn't whether you can develop emotional immunity. The question is whether you're ready to claim the psychological power that Jung proved belongs to you. Remember Heinrich's final insight. Doctor, I learned that true strength isn't about what can't touch you. It's about what you can touch without being changed by it. Your journey to emotional immunity starts right now, not tomorrow, not next week, now. Here's what you do next. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I release a new Jung psychology video every week. Watch this video next, where I reveal Jung's technique for reading people's hidden psychology in 30 seconds. Drop a comment telling me, what's the name of the person who triggers you most? Don't tell me why, just their name. This makes it real. Every trigger you encounter is a teacher. Every difficult person is a mirror. Every challenge is an opportunity for psychological alchemy. The only person who can disturb your peace is the person you haven't fully understood, yourself. Take Jung's disturbing discovery and make it your liberating truth. You have the power to never be bothered by anyone again, and I'll be here every week to show you how. Join the 2% who actually transform. Subscribe now. Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension. Still here? That means you're serious. I've created a free PDF guide with all 6 techniques broken down step by step. Link in the description. Download it before I take it down. And if you want to go even deeper, check out my playlist on dark psychology, where I reveal the manipulation techniques Jung warned about. Link in the description.